A little bit about me and Tammy. We you know, they say there's no perfect marriage, but God made her perfect for me. Amen. And I tell you, live every day like there's not a tomorrow, because we don't know that there is. And my Lord and Savior, He showed Himself to me and Tammy so many times. We'd always wanted to live at the beach. And I hate to say thank God for Florence, but that was our chance to get down there because they had so much work. But we went down to the beach and made so many memories in such a short period of time. She was diagnosed with stage 4 pancreatic cancer in March of 22. And what was so amazing was after the initial shock, she looked at me, she said, "LINWOOD, God's got this." And through the whole time, she just kept saying, "God's got this. God's got this." We went to Wilmington, and the doctor said that they were going to get a game plan, and they were going to do chemo first. And they took 3 chemo treatments and combined them into one. Her first chemo treatment, I wanted to jump up and run out of that room when I saw all them bags hanging there. I can only imagine what she felt. But she sat there and started telling the nurses what God meant to her. Just to tell you how strong it was, the first treatment was done on a Monday. The following Sunday, I heard her cry out. She was in the shower. And I ran in, and she was standing there with a handful of hair. And I just crawled in the shower and just held her. She got out, she said, "Buzz it." I said, "Do what?" She said, "Buzz it." Well, y'all can tell, I'm used to it. So, it's, it really didn't make a difference to me. But anyhow, I buzzed her head. I went back to the living room, sat down. A little bit, she come back in there. She said, "Why ain't you dressed to go to church?" I said, "You going to church?" She said, "The devil ain't keeping me from church." She said, "I'm going to church." We went and sat down in church that morning. A man got up a few seats down. He walked over to us. He said, "I have never felt the presence of God the way I do right now." And what else could you say? That she could have taken and stayed at home, but God led her there, and she never gave up. Her faith was a lot stronger than my faith, because there was times that I would just get so angry, because I'm like, why? Now we're living life's dream, and now we got to go through this, God. We took one day and we left to come to Wilson. I told her, I said, "I got to have something to eat." And she said, "Well, we're out here in Havelock." She said, "Stop at McDonald's." And I was like, ugh, McDonald's. I told her, I said, we'll stop at Arby's in Kinston. We got to Kinston, I missed my turn. I said, we'll go to Ken's Grill. I don't know if anybody knows Ken's Grill in LaGrange. I said, we'll go to Ken's Grill. We go to Ken's Grill and we walk in and sit down. We ain't been sitting there 5 minutes, and this man gets up and he walks over to us. He said, I don't know if you know it or not, it's not by chance that y'all stopped here today. He said, I want to pray with you. He knelt and prayed. He said his goodbyes. After a while, just another man gets up and walks over there to us. He said, man, he said, I can just see the presence of God. He said, it's just glowing around y'all. He said, I want to pray with you. He prayed. Well, me and Tammy, we're just like, we get up to leave, start to walk out the door, and this elderly black lady just wraps her arms around Tammy. And she starts praying we sat down in the car and we are speechless. I could have stopped anywhere, but God led us there. And the prayers that went up for Tammy. We had people in Italy. My daughter, she's with her work. There was a woman she knew in Italy. There was people in Italy praying. At one point, there was 100 and something pastors in the UK praying for Tammy. They had a meeting, and they were all praying for Tammy. We went on the beach one day, and this woman, I had walked up to get to, Tammy hadn't been on the beach for a while, and I set up a picnic for her. I walked up to the place to get the food there that Surf's Up, and this woman was standing there. She said, me and my husband have been taking pictures of y'all. She said, we're from Kansas City. She said, I'm in a prayer group of 54 women. She said, tomorrow night, she said, I promise you all 54 women will be praying for your wife. Everywhere we turn, somebody's praying for us, Tammy never gave up for nothing. The cancer was taking an effect on her pretty bad. That and the chemo. And one day she was laying there in the bed hurting, and I was praying, asking God to, Lord, all you got to do is speak it. And one of the nurses that had come to the house, she said, we've got a prescription to be picked up. She said, will you go pick it up? And I said, yeah. I knelt down beside Tammy before I did, and I started praying again. And I said, God, what do you want me to do? I said, what is it you want me to do? I'm asking, I'm pleading. I walked out of the house and started to drive out the driveway. And there was a package in the mailbox. I'm going to take this off. This shirt was in the mailbox. Worship through it. Amen. Now we sponsor a Christian radio station, Air One, down at the beach, and this shirt was sent to us. Now you tell me it was not sent that day, at that time, for God to answer what He wanted me to do. Time after time, God did this for us. Tammy went through she did her chemo, and then we had to go for the surgery. She was in surgery for 9 hours. Went to ICU. 2 weeks later, she got infection. They had to open her back up for more surgery. She ended up staying in ICU for 21 days. They told us time again that she probably wouldn't make it out of ICU. Tammy told me one day, she said, "Lynn, when I'm walking out of this hospital," she said, "I walked in, I'm walking out." I think it was 37 days total, and she walked out of that hospital. They pushed her up to the door, and she said, "Stop here. I'm walking out of my car." That was only God that got her there. I mean, there's no other way. And I know I'm rambling, y'all, because I am just I'm fighting it. At home, we had just so many people coming and visiting her and all. And one day in particular, this preacher came. I'm trying to find my note here because he told her, he said, "Tammy," he said, what are you thinking right now?" And she looked at him like, he was crazy. I mean, just, because what's going through your mind right now? She said, "If you are asking me, am I scared of dying?" She said, "No, I ain't scared of dying." She said, "I know where I'm going to be going." She said, "The only thing that scares me or that I'm worried about is the hurt that Linwood's going to feel, the hurt my grandchildren and children are going to feel." And that's just the way Tammy was. She was never worried about herself. I mean, it was always somebody else. She developed after they took her pancreas out, which then she's a diabetic. And she would aspirate where they had done her, her stomach was so small. She aspirated a lot. And she ended up with double pneumonia. They put her back in the hospital. She was in ICU. Went in one morning and the doctor said, Mr. Lamb said, "She's not going to live through today." Said she'll never live through today. I got on the phone and I called Rex. I called the other pastors that I know, friends, family. Said, "Y'all start praying." That afternoon, I had to go pick up my grandson, get him straightened out, and I come back. When I walked in the room, she turned and looked at me. She said, "Honey, did you get Harrison straightened out?" Now, this was a woman that they told me wasn't going to live that afternoon. And my jaw, my mouth dropped open, and I looked at the nurse, and she just started talking, Linwood. 2 days later, she went home from the hospital. I mean, that's only God. That's only God. Rex summed it up. He said, "Linwood," he said, "we all prayed for a miracle for Tammy." He said, "He showed us he could save her because he did it that day. But it just wasn't in the cards for the end. He had a better, it was her time. He had a better place for her." I went into her room prior to that day. And I walked in there one day, and she started praying, holding the nurse's hand, praying for the nurse. And I thought to myself, this is backwards, because, you should be praying for her, Same thing with doctors. I'd walk in, she'd be praying for the doctor. And I told Rex, I said, something happened to Tammy. I said, I don't know what. I said, her voice changed. Everything about Tammy, there's just things changed about her. And Rex said, Linwood, she was in the will of God. She accepted His will, what it was. And one day, it was after the cancer came back. She was laying there and she was wrenching. I mean, just wrenching in pain. Her body shaking. She was hurting so bad. And I felt so helpless. I couldn't do nothing. As a man, we feel like we're supposed to fix everything. But I found out there ain't but one that can fix everything. But I lashed out at God that day. And I told Rex, I said, it sounded like the voice of an angel. She said, honey, don't be mad with God. She said, it's not God. She said, it's the devil. She said, I'm going to be all right. She said, no matter what, I'm going to be all right. June the 28th was our anniversary. And I had prayed, and I said, God, please. Me and Tammy were together 41 years. Married for 38. And I was so blessed. I thought I was the strong one in the bunch, but I found out that Tammy was the strong one. We all should lead by example. I could sit in church beside her, and it was like electricity jumping from her body to mine. She's sitting there with her hands up, praising God. And sometimes you think, how could this woman, going through what she's gone through, and she's still serving her God with everything? People in the church would come and they would just so amazed at Tammy. Her smile would light up the room. She was probably the most humble person I believe I've ever met, to be honest. And I'm sorry. I've got way off of my notes, y'all, and I'm sorry. When I sit down to prepare this, or try to prepare it, I'd ask God to lead me in what to say. And Rex had called me and asked me to do it today. And I didn't realize until I started writing it today's being the 14th. Tammy passed away July the 14th. So it's 6 months to today. I'm sorry, Rex. Whew. Tammy told me, she said, one time she said, Linwood, sometimes you got to be real quiet to hear God speak. And since her death, I have found that out so many times. I went through a period of saying, why God? Why? Why God? Why? And one night he said, all you do is ask why. Why not praise me for what times I gave you? And I started praising him. Thanking him for all the memories. And I was able to get up off the couch. Quit laying there all day crying. I had wanted this, my grandson here, we've had custody of him now for 7 years, almost 8 years. God knew I was going to need somebody. You know, God looked back at all this from, I think about all the things that have happened up to this point. With my work, I worked all the time. And I'm not saying that God caused me to fall. I took a fall, nearly broke my neck. But I was able to spend the last 14 months with my wife 24/7. She never gave up. We would go in restaurants, and she was always find somebody to tell what God meant to her. So I found it a little easy to start talking to people when I take walks on the beach. To tell them about God. This t-shirt, God told me what to do that day. I wore it one day to Walmart in Newport. And this older gentleman, I was walking across the parking lot, he said, hey, your t-shirt. I said, okay, you know. He said, no, he said, I'm going through a lot right now and I don't know what direction to take. And I said, well, Well, let me tell you what direction to take. And we're sitting, I talked with him, prayed with him out in the parking lot. And just the other week, me and my son-in-law were talking about when you talk to people, you wonder, does that seed, does it flourish? Does it do what you want it to do? I went back home and happened to go back out to Walmart the other day, and there was Mr. Jimmy. And he said, "Hey, Linwood." I said, "Hey, buddy." I said, "You darn it, Mr. Jimmy." He said, "I'm doing good." He said, "I want to tell you something." He said, "You remember that T-shirt you wore that day?" He said, "That T-shirt changed my life." God talked to me again. There's an answer. He answered what what we were talking about. In Tammy's passing, I think at the funeral showed just how many people that God, through her, touched and changed. There was probably, Rex, 300 people maybe? I mean, that chapel couldn't hold anybody else. There was people that drove from the beach, and I'm talking waitresses from restaurants. There was people that worked at Walmart. It's just ordinary people that you would not think that would be at a funeral, that through Tammy. I mean, everybody she saw, she talked to about God. Y'all gonna have to give me a minute because I have got way off everything. I'm sorry. Number one, I'm sitting here trying to look at something and have no glasses on, and I'm blind as a bat. Look. All right, now we can see something here. In Tammy's time, I'll get back to. I'm like I said, I know I've rambled and I'm so sorry, but every doctor that Tammy had, they were God-believing doctors. They were God-fearing doctors, and you don't find that. You don't. That's just. Her doctors, instead of saying on stuff that would happen, and they wouldn't say, we don't know why, they would say, that's God. And that's something you don't find. It just nurses and everybody that Tammy saw were God-fearing. Tammy's faith, it never wavered. It only caused mine to blossom. Like I said, I rambled, and I'm going to have to go back to some. In January of last year, the cancer came back, or it never, they told her she was cancer-free in October, PET scan 3 months later, the cancer's back. But it's in her liver this time. The words out of Tammy's mouth is, "Linwood, God's got this." Her faith never I would say I've said she had the faith of Job, because no matter what happened to her, she just kept on believing. Two weeks before Tammy passed, we were laying in the bed praying or getting ready to pray, and I asked her, I said, Tammy, I said, if there's anything you could ask for right now, what would it be? She said, honey, she said, I want you to pray that God takes me home. She said, I'm ready to go home. Hardest prayer I've ever prayed in my life was to ask God to come get what meant the most to me. The week of her passing, she asked me, she said, honey, she said, who's the little girl that keeps coming up to the bed? And I said, Shug, I said, there's not a little girl here. She said, yes, there is. Says she comes up to the bed and says she'll look at me and smile and she'll walk away. She kept asking me time after time who the little girl was. Well, the nurse come in, and I was in the living room, and the nurse come in. She said, Mr. Lamb, she said, did y'all lose a child? And I said, no. She said, well, she's asked me who the little girl is sitting in the chair by her bed. I got to thinking, Tammy had a miscarriage. I'm going to see that little girl again one day. You know, people that don't have hope, I don't know how to go through stuff like this. People don't believe in God. I don't know how to do every day. How they take a step, how they take a breath. You know, they can't without Him. I know one day I'm going to see her again for eternity. You know, I lost my wife, my best friend, my soulmate. Man, I gained so much more. God showed me through her what I needed in my life. And when I say what I need, I mean to fully trust Him with everything I got. To pray about everything. You know, I got Harrison here I'm 62 years old, raising a 9-year-old. And whew, doing homework ain't, you know. But the other day, we were going down the road, and all of a sudden, Harrison started going, precious Lord, take my hand, lead me home. And he just kept singing. And he knew the words. And man, I'm like, Maybe I'm not doing such a bad job, you know. But that's God. These children out here in this world, that's what they need to see people get on their knees. He asked me, I don't know, it's been a couple of months ago, he said, I carried him to school, he said, Fa, he said, can I ask you a question? I said, yeah. He said, last night, when you were praying, you were praying for God to come get you. He said, what's going to happen to me? I said, buddy, I was praying for the rapture. I said, I was praying we're all going to go. Amen. And he went, oh, okay, well, that's all right then. And you know, that's one thing every morning, and I told Rex, I said, if I'm wrong, I'm sorry. And he said, well, if you're wrong, I am too, Lynn, because you knew what I was going to say. I said, I asked the Lord, maybe today, Lord, because I can't wait for that day. And it's not just to see my loved ones, it's to see God's face. It's to be able to, you know, me and Tammy said we wanted to go together so we could bow at His feet and give Him praise. And I won't be able to do that with her. And if you're struggling with your faith, no, just give it all to God. He will answer anything that you got, that you need. I'm like I said, I'm sorry. I thought I was so prepared for this. If you don't know Christ, don't let another step out that door. You find Him before you leave this building. I have seen, since Tammy's passed, my youngest daughter, which is his mama, she's battled addiction for 10 years. I used to be ashamed to talk about it, but I found out that it's either somebody's got somebody in their family or they know somebody that is battling with it. Well, she's in a Christian-based rehab right now. She went in a week ago. My son told me the other day, he said, Daddy, he said, I've been trying to do things better and do things right. He said, I'm amazed at how things have changed since I've started giving it to God. I'm blessed beyond anything. I am. Like I said, I lost it. I feel like I lost everything, but I gained everything too. I went to my daughter's church, my oldest daughter, to her church the other Sunday. And I went to the altar and I was standing there praying. And I felt hands start touching me, people around me, and I opened my eyes. I had 7 grandyoungers around me, praying. What more could you ask for? To know that you youngins, the babies are coming up in the Lord. I told Rex this, like I said, I apologize for rambling, y'all. I do. I've got way off of everything, but it is what it is. Tammy called me into the bedroom one night. She said, honey, she said, can I talk to you a minute? I said, yeah. I said, what you want to talk about? She said, I want to talk about our marriage. I went, oh, Lord, what have I done, you know? You know, normally that ain't a good thing, you know. And we started talking about stuff. She'd bring up stuff, and I'm like, I don't remember that, you know. And it was the most free feeling I've ever had in my life. God gave us an opportunity it's like, is there anything that's not forgiven? Is there anything that you have ill feelings about? I mean, 41 years, no, there's nothing. You know, Rex married us. I'm sorry, Rex. You know, I've said that I feel like that half of me is gone. And it is because God joined us together. And like I said, I apologize, y'all. I had so much I wanted to say. I had wrote so much down. God's been there all this time. The time's building up to this. Times that when I wasn't living like I should, He was still right beside of me. And He used this moment to bring me even closer than I've ever been in my life. And I'm so thankful for it. I have not done Tammy justice up here this morning. I'm sorry, Rex. There's stuff that I want to say that if we get into it, I know what it's going to be. Folks, have y'all living at the beach? I don't know, it seems like you see everything. The sunrise is different. You see the sunset is different. And they're different every day. God gives us something different every day. And people have lost their awe of God's power and His mercy. You walk the beach and you wonder, how does this water stop right here? I'm thankful I serve a merciful God. a living God. Sorry.
Years ago, many years ago, I was ministering to a lady who had cancer. She wasn't a member of our church. She was a member of the Methodist Church. And I shouldn't have said that because now what I'm going to say is going to sound bad. Nobody was going to visit me from that church. And so I started. And for 2 years, this lady fought cancer. Good lady, loved the Lord, so strong in her faith. And one day, just before God took her home, I asked her, I said, if, and she had told me, she said, before the cancer, I was just a nominal Christian. I just went to church to come home. She said that when the cancer came, God drew so close to me, and I drew so close to him. And I asked her that day, I said, if you could choose not to have cancer and be as you were before, would you choose that over the way you are now? Would you choose cancer to have that closeness with God? And she did not hesitate. She said, she smiled and said, I choose the cancer. God is real. Amen. God is real. And we see him. We see the invisible God through events in our lives. If we have faith, we can see him. And that's what this is all about. I appreciate him. I appreciate him coming. I knew it was going to be hard for him. But I appreciate him standing up and doing this. I love you, my brother.
I love you too, Rick.
God bless. I'm going to ask you to stand, heads bowed and eyes closed. What's going on in your life? If you know him, God is working. Can you see him? Can you see him? Got some good news for you. As LINWOOD began, I was in the back leading Mary Caitlin's little girl to Christ. She's saved. That's rejoicing. That's rejoicing. Y'all pray for her. And if you're here today and you don't know him, you come and you receive him as Lord and Savior of your life. And let the miracles start happening to you, to your loved ones. Whatever the reason. Maybe you're going through that burden. You need to talk to the Lord. He's listening. Whatever the reason, we invite you to come. Won't you come? Won't you come? God bless. God bless. God bless.